What's up, guys? Welcome. Let me turn off the fan. Alright, welcome back to another episode of DogeBag Poker Vlogs. As you guys can see, I still haven't gotten ready for the day yet. It's around 12:30 right now. I keep intending to get up at like 10-ish, but the past 4 years or so, my sleep schedule has been completely so it's a little later than I wanted, and just got up. Still don't know where I want to play today yet, but I do know where I want to get breakfast, or I guess lunch now. It's a place I've been meaning to go the past few times I was in Vegas, but I just never got the chance. So I'm gonna get ready for the day, and then we'll head out. Alright guys, we are here at Boulder Station. I was looking through Poker Atlas for poker rooms I hadn't been to yet, and this was one of them. It's definitely out of the way of the strip and the main area that people think of when they think of Vegas, but I think by now you guys know the drill. I'm trying to go to poker rooms that I haven't been to yet, and this is one of them. So we're gonna be playing I think 1-2 here. They don't offer like a 2-5 or anything, so that's kind of unfortunate, but I think the 1-2 is a 300 max, as is typical with Vegas poker rooms. It has a good buy-in structure, unlike California where you can't even bind for 100 big blinds for most low stakes games. Pretty unfortunate, but I don't think I'm super interested in playing here, to be honest, because it is definitely just kind of a random poker room. But maybe I'll just play here for a few hours and then go to a different casino that I haven't been to yet once again, and then I could get put 2 stones in a bird. Then I can put 2 stones and 1 bird in one day. All right guys, wish me luck. I'm gonna be playing 1-2, and hopefully we can run it up. Once I got to the poker room at Boulder Station, there was only one 1-2 game running, and the other tables were all Omaha or limit games. But eventually I get a seat at the 1-2 game, and pretty much all the stacks are short. Most of them are less than 100 big blinds, and the table looks pretty tight. But we're just gonna have some fun. It's 1-2. We're gonna have a chill session. First hand I get dealt, I have ace-jack suited in the cutoff. There are 3 limps, and then I bump it up to $15 and get 2 callers from early position. Flop comes queen 4, queen 2 clubs. Decent flop for my hand, even though I don't really have a ton. Just gonna be good for my range in general. So once both players check it over to me, I bet 20, hoping to take it down. Although I pretty much have the nut nothing. It's unlikely my opponents have ace king here, so I should probably have the best non-paired hand. And the under the gun plus 2 player calls. So we are going to a turn heads up. It's a good one. It's the jack of hearts. There are now 2 flush draws on the board. We've got middle pair. My opponent checks to me once again. I put out a small bet of 45. Probably could bet bigger here, but yeah, I just made it 45 at the time. My opponent calls. We are still going to a river heads up. It is the 6 of diamonds. Should be a complete blank. And once my opponent checks it over to me, I'm just going to take my showdown value here. I say I have a jack, and my opponent nods. And after I show my hand, he shows me ace king. Yeah, so I was completely wrong about having the nut nothing on the flop. It turns out my opponent's limp call with ace king. So we're going to win this hand, but this is something I should keep in mind. Speaking of ace king, that's the hand we have in this very next hand. I'm in the big blind. The hijack opens to $6, and I put out a 3-bet to 20. My opponent calls. We're going to a flop. It's great. It's deuce, ace 3, rainbow. We've got top pair, top kicker. On this type of board with low cards and an ace, it's pretty unlikely my opponent has much he can call with, so I actually just decide to check it here. Another reason I did that is because we're only playing $90 effective. Like I said earlier, most of the table is playing short stacked, so there's less of an incentive to build up a pot early. I'm just going to trap. My opponent checks back. We are taking a turn card, which is the 7 of clubs. Should still have the best hand here. I'm going to go for some value now. I bet $15. Looking back, I don't hate my bet, but I think I can make it like 20 or 25. If I bet like 20, 25, pot's going to be around 80, 90 on the river, and he's going to have about $70 left effective, so it's going to be easier to get the money in. But as played, I just bet 15. My opponent makes the call. We're going to a river card, which is the 9 of hearts. Still shouldn't have changed much. I'm going to go for more value. I bet $50 into a pot of about 70, and my opponent folds, saying he had a pocket pair. So not going to get too much value here, but still nice to win a small pot. Next hand, we've got ace deuce of diamonds in the big blind. 2 players limp, and I bump it up to 10, and both of them call. We're going 3 ways to a flop. It's a pretty good one for us. It's jack 3 queen with 2 diamonds. We've got the nut flush draw here. The small blind checks, and I make it $22. Only the cutoff calls. We're going to a turn card. It's the 4 of hearts. We pick up a gutter to go along with our flush draw, but other than that, it's not too much help. And I'm putting my opponent on something like top pair, middle pair, something like that. I don't think I can get him to fold, so I just decide to check, try to see a free card. Nope, the cutoff bet's $40, and once again, my opponent is playing short stacked. So my opponent only had around 83 left behind. I thought he had like 100 something, so I decided to take the aggressive route and get the money in. We can never be too far behind here, having the nut flush draw as well as a straight draw. I put him all in, and then once he calls, I realized that he didn't have as much. So we really didn't have much fold equity. Even if he did have like 100 something, he's probably just calling it off anyways after betting 40. But we're never going to be in too bad shape here. So we're going to a river card. It's a good one, guys. It's the 5 of spades. We've got the nuts, and I immediately say I hit it and show my hand. And my opponent shows king queen. So pretty much expected. We just got lucky here, and very happy to take this one down, especially with this pot being a little bigger than the others. We're running super hot so far. I came into this 1-2 game expecting it to be just a chill one, and I was probably just going to play for a little bit and then leave. But we're running really well. We've got a big stack, and we're just winning and winning and winning. So this is turning out to be a little bit more eventful than I originally planned, especially when I pick up pocket queens in the hijack. I raise it up to $8 once action folds to me. The big blind calls, so we're going heads up to a flop. It's a decent one, guys. 4-5-4 rainbow. We should still have the best hand here. The big blind checks it over to me, and I'm going to go for some value. He's going to have to float a lot here with some ace highs, and if he has some middling pairs, he's going to have to call as well. I bet $8. Probably could have made it bigger, but my opponent ends up making the call, so we'll take it. The turn card is the queen of hearts. We've got top boat, and we continue to run super hot. Unfortunately, though, this board is pretty dry. It's going to be pretty hard to get value unless my opponent had like a backdoor flush draw or a straight draw. So once the big blind checks it over to me, I just check back to trap. The river card's the 3 of diamonds. My opponent bets $25. We're going to go for some value. He's only got 98 left. Initially, it seems like a shove is the only sizing that makes sense. And in hindsight, I wish I had shoved because if he's going to call here, he's just going to call a shove regardless. But in the moment, I thought sizing down a little bit would be best, so I made it $75. I don't like this. I think either like a min raise just to get a crying call or a shove is best, but I made it 75. And unsurprisingly, my opponent folds. Can't expect him to have too much here, so yeah, we're going to take a small win once again, and happy to be running really well and have super easy decisions. In the very next hand, I get dealt king 8 of clubs in the low jack. There's a limp, and I bump it up to $10. The small blind calls, he's the same opponent from the last hand, and the limper calls as well. So 3 ways to a flop. It's 10-6-6. We don't get any help. All we've got is an over and a backdoor straight draw. Action ends up checking through. The turn card's the 8 of diamonds. We pick up middle pair, and this time the small blind decides to bet. He makes it $25, and once the other player folds, not going to do anything here but call. The river comes, the king of hearts, guys. We pick up a better 2 pair. And even better is that the small blind shoves for only $63. Obviously, I call here, and my hand should be good almost all the time. So I just show my 2 pair right away, and he ends up mucking. So we win another hand against this player, and we're just running super well, winning every single hand we're getting involved in. The session is going way better than expected. Alright guys, this next one's a little bit weird, and it's not a huge pot, but it is against the same player as last time, so I thought I'd include it. I've got 6-5 offsuit in the big blind. Not a hand I'd normally be playing, but 2 people limp and the small blind just completes, so I decide to check my option. And by the way, I only filmed the end of this hand because I didn't expect to be playing 6-5 offsuit, so I didn't have the camera ready, but I ended up recording at the very end since I realized this hand got a little bit more eventful than I thought. We're gonna get to see a flop for free. It comes 7-Jack-7 rainbow. Action ends up checking through. The turn card is the 4 of hearts, giving me an open-ended straight draw. So this time when the small blind bets, I decide to bet 10, and only the player in the low jack calls. This is the same player as before. And I get the feeling that he's out to get me after those previous hands. We're going to a river, and it comes the 3 of diamonds, guys. We hit our straight, and now we're going to try to get some value. It's not a huge pot, but we're going to put out a bet. I start reaching for chips to bet, and I see my opponent slightly lift up his cards and just look at them, and it seemed pretty clear that he was going to muck his hand no matter what. So I actually decide to bet really tiny here just to squeeze out as much value as I can, and I bet $7, which is a quarter-size pot bet, and my opponent doesn't muck his hand right away, so that's good news. And eventually, he actually raises to 21. So I didn't expect a raise, and I didn't even mean to induce a raise, but I actually do still believe he was going to fold his hand if I put out a reasonable size bet. So I think he's trying to actually exploit me betting really small. It just seemed really genuine when he was looking at his cards. He didn't try to make it like obvious or anything. So I think he was being genuine. I'm going to put out a 3-bet here. If he has a full house or something, he has a full house. But I highly doubt that. So I put out a 3-bet to $60, and my opponent ends up folding. And looking back, it's kind of weird to 3-bet when I think my opponent's bluffing, because I could just call and just win the hand as opposed to somehow running into a random full house and getting 4-bet. But at the time, that's what I did. I don't really know what I was thinking. But it ended up working out, and I think my read was correct based on what happened. So we're going to move on. The session continues to go well, and we just keep hitting our hands. If you guys thought this hand was weird, just wait till you see this next one. I've got King 9 offsuit in the big blind. Once again, there are 2 limps, and the small blind completes. Same thing as before, except this time I have a slightly better hand. So I'm going to raise it up here. I make it $15. The button ends up calling, so we're going to go to a flop heads up. It comes Jack 9-3 rainbow. We've got middle pair. Action is on me, and I think this board is going to favor the caller's range much more, and I've got decent showdown value, so I'm just going to check it here and see what my opponent does. No need to bloat up the pot when I have just a middling hand. My opponent bets 15. I'm just going to call here. There's not really any other option here with middle pair, so we're going to a turn card. It's the Queen of Hearts. We pick up a gut shot for what it's worth, but it is another overcard to the board. Not really sure if this is better for me or my opponent. I mean, I guess I probably have more queens in my range, but this also makes the board like a little more wet. I'm not really sure. My opponent betting on the flop seems like she has maybe like top pair or something. Yeah, honestly, I don't remember exactly what I was thinking, but I check it once again. My opponent bets 20. Still a pretty small size bet relative to the pot, so I'm pretty sure that that is the reason why I made the call here. We're going to a river card once again, but I'm not feeling super good about my hand. The river card is pretty much a blank. It's the 3 of diamonds, and it says here I decided to lead for 35. Pretty small bet. I imagine that the only reason I did that was because I felt like my hand is no longer good, and since I picked up a little equity on the turn, that's probably why I called, and my plan was probably either to check call or check raise on the river, depending on how good my hand was, if it improved, or to lead out if I didn't improve, since I figured that my hand probably wasn't going to be good here and I might be able to scare my opponent off. Yeah, I wish I could explain what was going on, but my opponent calls pretty quickly and I am certainly no good here. I say I have a 9 and she mucks her hand.
I have a 9. You good?
Yeah, my pair of 9s ended up being good here, and I have no idea what she could have called with, but we somehow win this hand. This is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, but we're gonna win this hand. No complaints here.
I got back to pair. Ah, I see.
And yeah, even when I play weirdly and my opponent does exactly what I don't want them to do, we still end up winning here. So the session just keeps going our way. This next hand is against the same opponent. We've got ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff. 2 limps once again, and this time I raise it up to $10. Only the limper and the low jack calls. It's the same opponent as before. We're going to a flop heads up, which is king 6-3 rainbow. My opponent checks to me, and I'm going to be betting this board a lot of the time. So I put out a pretty small bet of $8, and my opponent makes the call. Turn is the jack of spades. Doesn't help us except giving us a gut shot. Once again, my opponent checks to me again, and I put out a bet of 20. My opponent calls once again. So going to a river card here, it's the most blank card in the deck. It's the deuce of clubs, and this time it's my opponent who leads, and she makes it $20 into 81. Seems like a really familiar situation to last time, but I'm not going to make the same mistake as I assume she did and call with ace high or something. So I actually say out loud that I don't believe my opponent, but I can't really call here, so I ended up folding.
I don't believe you, but I don't think I can call.
This hand wasn't super interesting, but it was just funny since it seemed very similar to last hand, except with the rolls reversed. Alright guys, time for a more normal hand. We get dealt ace 10 once again, but this time it's suited. I'm in under the gun, and I raise it up to $8. I get 3 callers. We are going to a flop 4 ways, and it's a decent one, guys. It's 9 king ace with 2 hearts and 1 spade. We've got top pair, okay kicker, and a backdoor flush draw. The big blind checks. I'm next to act, and I decide to bet 20 here. The button ends up making the call, and everyone else folds. So we're going to a turn card. It's the 4 of hearts. Not the kind of card I was hoping for. It completes the flush draw. So this time I decide to slow down and just check. We've still got a decent top pair, and I don't want to bloat the pot up too much when I can easily be beat now. My opponent ends up betting $20, and I'm definitely not going to fold here for this cheap. So I just make the call. The river card is pretty interesting. It's the ace of diamonds, so we now have trips, and I don't know. It's kind of good and kind of bad. On one hand, if my opponent has a flush, it doesn't matter. We're still losing, and now they could potentially get more value from us. There's definitely some range of bet sizing that I would normally not call if I still only had top pair here, but I would call if I had trips. But on the other hand, if my opponent had 2 pair, like king 9 or something, or maybe they just also had an ace and felt comfortable betting on the turn after I checked, we are now beating hands like that. But anyways, I decide I'm just going to check it here. Don't really want to bet for value, and I think any hands except maybe like king 9 are probably just going to fold, or maybe like a worse ace. So I decide to just check it here. I don't see too much merit in betting, and my opponent actually checks back, so it's very likely we're good here. I show my trips, and my opponent has jack 4. They had the second nuts, and yeah, they checked back, which I guess is pretty lucky since they probably could have gotten a decent bit of value from my hand, but we're still doing fine, and I definitely cannot complain with how the session's been going, so we're just going to take the L this time. We've got another suited ace in this next hand. I've got ace 5 of hearts and under the gun. I make it $8 and get called by the hijack and the button. So we're going 3 ways to a flop, and it's pretty much the same situation. The flop comes ace 6 10. We've got top pair with a backdoor flush draw once again, except we don't have as good of a kicker. I could see both a check and a bet being fine here out of position, but I just lean towards betting a little bit to get some value. So I make it $17, and only the player on the button calls. And once again, guys, this is the same player I got involved in several hands with before. The turn card is the deuce of clubs, completing the flush. So once again, very similar to the last hand, we've got top pair and a card completing the flush comes in. So I just kind of do the same thing. I go into check call mode, and my opponent ends up betting $35 once I check. Not going to go anywhere, especially since I felt like this player was slightly out to get me, not in like a malicious way, just more so like getting involved in more hands since I happened to win the hands we were playing against each other. So we are going to a river card now. It is the 5 of diamonds, so pretty good card on the river. Once again, we've got 2 pair, but just gonna check here. I think I could go for value in some spots and depending on the player, but I lean towards a check in this situation, and my opponent bets 55, and just gonna call it off here, guys. If he has a flush, he has it. I make the call, and my opponent ends up having pocket 6s for a flop set. So very nice hand. He wasn't scared of the flush at all, and he pretty much got almost as much value as he could have from my hand. So yeah, kudos to him, and we're going to have to lose one against this player after all those other hands. Get ready, guys, because this is one of the craziest hands in the session. It starts off with the under the gun +1 player opening to 13. I've got 10-9 suited in the cutoff. I make the call, and the big blind comes along as well. So we're going to a flop 3 ways. It's pretty good for my hand. It's deuce 8-5 with 2 clubs. We've got 2 overs, a flush draw, and multiple backdoor straight draws. The big blind checks and the pre-flop raiser puts out a c-bet of 25. Both players aren't playing too deep. The player who just bet only had like 110 total, and the big blind had about 150 or so. So with the stack sizes being what they were, and with my specific hand not having any showdown value yet, but having a ton of equity, I decide I'm going to raise here. I could just call here since we're multi-way and I could definitely pick up more equity or even just improve to a flush on the turn and just get the money in then. But I think being aggressive here is going to be good. This board isn't going to favor the pre-flop aggressor's range too much, and I could probably get some hands to fold that are currently beating mine. So I decide on a sizing of all in since any sizing is just going to commit me to the pot anyways. So I decide to shove here, and it also looked like the big blind was going to fold. He did not seem interested in the hand. But when I shoved, the big blind ended up calling, and so did the pre-flop raiser. So we are going to a turn card and a river card all in 3 ways, and all I have at the moment is 10 high. Let's see what happens.
Ooh. Wow.
There is a straight. Then,
No. Oh yeah, it is the nuts. You're right.
then 9 for the line straight.
He had a set of 5s, right? Yeah.
How about the other one?
Jacks.
For,
Wow.
That's right, guys. The turn and river come runner, runner, 6, 7, and we hit one of our backdoor straight draws and scoop the pot. We end up cracking both a flop set as well as an overpair. Could not ask for a better session so far. I really need to stop assuming players are going to fold just because they seem disinterested in the hand. I've been in several similar hands where players do this, and I never seem to learn my lesson. So, lesson learned, don't assume a player is going to fold just because they act disinterested in the hand. But we end up cracking both of these hands. Session's going amazing so far, and it just doesn't seem like we can lose any big hands so far. We've got another funny hand coming up in this next one, guys. I get dealt King Jack suited in under the gun. There's a $5 button straddle. I am still first to act. I make it $15 and get 5 callers. So we're going to a flop 6 ways here. It comes 9 deuce 10 with 1 club and 2 jacks. We've got a backdoor flush draw as well as a gut shot and 2 overs. So not too bad of a flop, though we are super multi-way and plenty of hands have us beat right now, potentially. So I decide to check action checks to the cutoff, who is the opponent. From all those previous hands I've been talking about, we're starting to build a history at the table with this guy. He bets $85 into a pot of 93. So really, really big bet, almost a pot size bet. The button folds and action's now on me. And I think normally I'd fold here, but the issue was that there were still 3 players left to act, and they all had pretty big stacks. So one of them had like 200, so just about 100 bigs, and the other 2 had 400, give or take, each of them. So I felt like there were more implied odds than there usually would be, and if one person calls, it might incentivize the others to come along, and we could potentially win a big pot. I don't ever really hate folding here to such a big bet, especially since this player didn't really do this any other time in the session. So I think it's just the folds here, but I decide to get involved and call. We're running really hot and I'm having fun playing some 1-2 again. So I make the call, and yeah, all my opponents fold. So we are heads up against this one guy, and he doesn't have too much left. So when the turn comes, the 8 of hearts, giving us 4 more outs to hit a straight, then I decide I'm going to take the aggressive route this time and potentially try to fold out any hands that could be beating us that might fold to this bet. And I put my opponent all in for his remaining 151. And unfortunately, he ends up calling here, so we are looking for some help. Nope, the river comes the 10 of spades, guys. And as if it's already not bad enough that we only have king high, it also completes the flush. So let's see what happens.
I have king high.
A pair of 10s with a king jack. Okay.
Wow. Nice hand. How much is it? Like 1...
He got a flush. What are you talking about?
He has a flush. Yeah, he has a flush.
Inside with a money.
He's alright.
Doesn't matter. He wins regardless.
So as you guys saw, my opponent kind of misread his hand. Thought he had ace high and called on the turn anyways, but doesn't really matter. Ace high would have been good. Nice hand to you, sir. We've got 6-5 offsuit once again, guys. This time I'm in the small blind, and there are 4 limps to me. I decide I'm going to complete here. I pretty much never limp, but I think if the big blind and just the table in general is really passive, I can get away with just putting in a $1 chip and seeing a flop multi-way here. So that's what I decide to do, and the big blind checks, so we're going to a flop 6 ways. It's very good for us. It's 4 queen 7. We've got an open-ended straight draw here. Action checks to an early position player who bets $15. Only I make the call here with my straight draw. Could raise sometimes here, but I'm happy to just call. If my opponent's betting into multiple players, it's likely he has like a top pair-ish kind of hand. So I'm just going to call here, hopefully improve. Nope, the turn comes another 7. I check once again, and my opponent bets 25. Gonna make the call one more time here. We're playing pretty deep, and it's not too big of a bet, so if I do hit my hand, it could be somewhat disguised, and we could potentially win a big pot. So we're going to a river card. It's the 9 of hearts. We officially have 6 high and 6 high only. I decide to check after thinking for quite a while. I thought about making a move here, but decided against it. Let's just see what he does, and maybe we can bluff him off his hand, depending on the situation. He bets 50, and I decided to raise here, guys. I don't like this at all. I think if he's triple barreling here, especially with the pot being multi-way on the flop, he just has like a strongish queen. He'd probably check back all his weak queens, and if he had anything better than that, that's gonna be hard to get him to fold. So I really don't like this, but I ended up raising to 135. I also don't like the sizing. If he has like a decent-ish hand, he's gonna just call anyways, and if he has a monster, then I'm getting raised and I'm just gonna have to fold. So looking back, I really hate this play. It's just another one of those situations where I tried to be over aggressive in a spot that I really didn't need to. And what's even worse is that my opponent shoves for 303, so just makes me feel even dumber about this play. It seemed like he did have a monster, and obviously we're just gonna have to fold here. So not gonna see exactly what he had, but yeah, just looking back on the hand objectively and like seeing the situation and seeing it written out, just looks like a really bad play. And unfortunately, I ended up basically throwing away a bunch of money that I definitely did not need to lose in this hand. This next hand isn't super interesting, but it does kind of introduce the kind of player type that one of the newer players was at our table. So this player had just sat down not too long ago. He's in the low jack, and he raises to 17. This was bigger than his normal raise size that he was using in previous hands, so that's something to consider. The cutoff makes the call, and I've got 10s on the button. I think looking back, I should just be calling here. I don't think a 3-bet really achieves that much, but since I had 10s at the time, I was just like, gonna 3-bet this. That's what I normally do. Can never be too bad. But I think in this situation, and as well as many others, you can very easily just call with 10s. Action is now back on the pre-flop raiser, and he ends up raising this time and actually shoving for 470 over my $70 3-bet. The cutoff folds, and I think Forbidden just fold as well. Yeah, I have no idea what he's doing this with, but this is just kind of introducing this player type. We don't know what this shove means. Probably means he has a really strong hand, but we're going to keep this player in mind for future hands. But that's just a little introduction for you guys. At this point in the session, I was basically back down to even. I was winning a lot of small hands and some really big hands, but after a few losses, then yeah, pretty much dwindled back down to what I bought in for. Moving on to this next hand, we've got Ace-King. Been a while since we had a premium. There's a $5 button straddle. The cutoff decides to just limp, and I raise to 25 from the small blind with my hand. The big blind flats, and everyone else folds. So we are going to a flop heads up. It's 7-3-5 rainbow. I'm just going to check it here. I could bet on this board, but I have the nut nothing, and very happy to just see another card. So we are going to a turn card once my opponent checks back. It's the 5 of hearts. Unlikely either of us improved. And I think at the time, I thought to myself that my opponent's going to bet any 7 on the flop, so he probably doesn't have too much here, so I could probably get him off his hand. But I think a check here is totally fine. I still have the nut nothing, and if I'm putting my opponent on nothing as well, then not really any need to bet here, except to like protect my hand. But I ended up betting $20 at the moment, and my opponent makes the call. So we are going to a river card. It's the 7 of hearts. So kind of happy to see that because I don't think my opponent has something like an overpair here. And really, we're only losing to like a random 5, a random 7, something like that. Maybe like 6s, but I didn't think my opponent had those. Not really sure what I thought he had, but I just thought to myself, hey, it's 2 pair on the board. I've got an ace. It's just one of those situations. So I decided I'm going to have a little fun here, and I put out a bet.
69. Oh, perfect.
Did you say
69, 69.
You
yeah.
said 69?
Wait, what's so funny? I'm just betting 2/3 pot.
You calculated that, right?
yeah, that's 2/3 pot.
Oh, man. Now I can't even think. Anyway. I'm going to use that 69.
That's right, guys. The old bet of 69 gets the job done.
You could have gone 3/4 spot, then you would have to go on 60.
In this next hand, there's a $5 button straddle. We get dealt king, queen of clubs in the small blind. The cutoff limps, and I raise it up to 20, and I get called by the big blind, the straddler, and the cutoff. So we are going 4 ways to a flop, which is 4-7 queen with 2 diamonds. We've got top pair here. What's annoying is that we're out of position, and normally I think I'd bet here, and I kind of wish I just did that. But I actually checked in this situation because the table had been much more aggressive lately, which is kind of hard to tell because I can't really show every single hand. But just at the time, the table has been very aggressive, and I thought a check call or even a check raise would be really good here. So I decided to mix it up and just check. But I did say that I hoped I bet because everyone ends up checking through. So we're going to a turn card. Luckily, it's not a bad one. It's a jack of hearts. So we're still feeling pretty confident about our hand, and this time I'm going to bet here. I decided to size up, and I made it 65, and I only get called by the player in the cutoff. So we are going to a river card. It's a really bad one, guys. It's the ace of diamonds. Once again, probably one of the worst cards in the deck, if not the worst. And we are now getting beat by not only hands that had a flush draw on the flop, but now if he had any ace, then yeah. Unfortunate. So I just decide to check here, and I don't think I'm getting much value from much worse. And he ends up shoving for 118. And I don't know. I think against some players we could call here, but I just felt like he wouldn't be doing this if he had a worse hand than me. I don't see him turning some random hand into a bluff. So I just decided I'm going to fold here. I don't know how I feel about that, though. This is one of the better hands I'm going to have in this spot. So yeah, guys, to be honest, when I do these hand histories of like past sessions, I don't remember exactly what I was thinking, and sometimes I look back and just completely disagree with what I did. But I don't know. On the river, I just feel like he's not bluffing. But at the same time, my hand's not like super strong where I feel like I need to call. But it does seem to be up there in my range. So yeah, not really sure, to be honest. I'm in the small blind once again in this next hand. There are 4 limps, and I've got Jack 8 offsuit in the small blind. And in this situation, I just decided to complete, and the big blind ends up checking. Obviously, I wouldn't be doing something like this if I was in a different position, but felt like I could put in $1 and see a flop. So we're going to do just that. We're going to a flop 6 ways. It comes 10, 9, 10 rainbow. I check with my open-ended straight draw, and action ends up checking to the early position player who bets 10. There's 1 caller, and I decide I'm going to put in a raise here. This is a good spot. So I make it 45, and only the early position player calls. So heads up now to a turn card. It doesn't bring any help. It's a 3 of diamonds. So I just decide to check here and slow down. And luckily my opponent checks as well. The river cards, the 9 of spades. So now there's a 2 pair on the board. We've got jack high. So I just decide to check here and give up. I don't think I'm getting him to fold. He ends up checking back, and he shows... Guys, you will not believe this. He shows ace 10 offsuit.
Oh, nice hand.
For top boat. Yeah, you guys, you're seeing this hand correctly. This guy, he checked back top boat on the river, and somehow not any more money got in after the flop. I mean, there was someone who limped called with ace king. It might have been this player, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure. I do remember in both hands, the player I was playing against was in that kind of area. So it might have been the same player, but... yeah, guys, in this session, we were playing at a table where people are checking back top boat on the river. But at the same time, I have done plenty of nitty things in my time as a poker player, so I wouldn't put it past myself to do something just as nitty. So yeah, we're going to move on to the next hand, guys. This next hand is going to be one of the session-defining hands. The under the gun player limps, and we've got ace deuce of spades in under the gun +2. I raise it up to $10, and I get 4 callers. So we're going 5 ways to a flop. It's 8 ace 4 with 2 spades. We've got top pair and the nut flush draw. This is a dream flop for my hand. The player in under the gun checks, and here it looks like I decided to check as well. I don't absolutely hate that, but I think a bet is just the standard thing to do here. But the main reason I checked here is because since we have the nut flush, there's less of an incentive to fold out all the other flush draws or charge them. And there's not really much else going on the board in terms of like straights or like, you know, high cards where a lot of people have hands they can call with. And we've also got one of the aces. So I guess in this situation, it was multi-way, and I thought maybe I could play a little tricky, get someone to bet, and I could check raise or I could check call with really good equity and just see what develops. But yeah, I don't hate a check at all, but I think you could just bet here and start building a pot with a good hand. But the other players end up checking as well, so we are still going 5 ways to a turn card. It's the 5 of diamonds. We pick up a gut shot just in case, and now there are 2 flushes on the board. We definitely want to start charging other hands, but it's actually the under the gun player who ends up betting first, and he bets 10 into 50. And I decide I'm going to raise here, although I didn't really think of it as a raise so much as just betting a more standard amount into the 50. So I raised it up to $45, and everyone folds except for the under the gun player, who decides to re-raise, and he actually shoves for $522. What the heck? This is the same player in the previous hand where I had 10s, and he just shoves like 470 or whatever it was over my like $70 3-bet. So I still have no idea what this means, but I'll talk more about this hand afterwards, but I'll let you guys just see what happened.
I think I just have to call. Yeah. I call.
Call? Okay.
Nice hand.
Landed 816 Omaha.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, so I absolutely hate my call here, guys. And unlike what I said in the video, I absolutely do not have to call in this situation. It's one of those situations where I just kind of got caught in like, oh, I have top pair and a flush draw. Of course, I'm going to call off here. But at the same time, I didn't like it, obviously, as you can hear in the video. And I think that's just my brain telling me that, no, you actually don't have to call here. I kind of explain it more after the session while I'm like filming in the casino, but I will kind of explain why I absolutely don't need a call here. One is that, and this is like the main reason, is that the shove was so big that it's like a completely different situation than if my opponent had just like raised to a normal amount. When he raises this big, my odds go down, and we're not even on the flop where there are like 2 more cards to come and I have a flush draw, which would like greatly improve my equity. So that already is a big thing. I just have worse odds in general. But then also it's just one of those things where like if he's raising this big, I shouldn't really expect my like 2 pair outs or my trips outs to be very good, and I shouldn't even expect my ace to be any good at all. I'm really just banking on hitting my flush or my gut shot, and yeah, he's probably gonna have like 2 pair himself here or a set, which he happened to have. And yeah, I just did not need a call here, but I just got caught up in pair plus flush draw. I'm going to call it off. So yeah, just unfortunate. And we are going to lose this really big hand that I absolutely did not need to be involved in by the end. So yeah, this was a very session-defining hand. We were about even when this hand happened. And yeah, we went from having an amazing session where I was just running super well to one where I made some big mistakes, especially this hand, and yeah, we are now down a good amount. Unfortunately, that was the last interesting and major hand of the session, and pretty soon afterwards, I ended up cashing out since it was getting pretty late, and I wanted to go eat. So we were in for a total of 1,000. I believe that I bought in for another like 500 after that hand or some other hand, and we end up cashing out for 555, which makes for a loss of 445. and that officially makes us negative on the trip so far. Just about even actually, but maybe minus like 1 or 200. So yeah, unfortunate session, and sometimes poker is just like that. But at least we got to try this poker room after many years when I first visited it and they didn't have no limit running. So yeah, shout out to Boulder Station. Probably won't be going there again since it's just kind of a random poker room, but yeah, it was fun playing there, I guess. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the outro.
I don't know if there's a... Sorry?
Robert, one limit at Robert.
I am.
Did they check your ID?
No, they stopped doing it. I feel like I look old now. They stopped doing it.
I won't. I still check you. I don't care. Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 40, 50, 55.
All right, thank you so much.
Alright guys, just finished up a session. I think I played for like 10 hours or something. Let me check. Yeah, I played for just under 10 hours. That was a roller coaster session. It started off with me running pretty much as well as I possibly could have. I won like pretty much every big hand and then lost like none. And then after losing a couple big hands and then punting off a lot of my stack in like 2 failed bluffs, I was back to even for a long time and I was card dead for a while. And then that one hand where I had a top pair plus flush draw against set, yeah, that was brutal. And contrary to what I said at the time, I don't think I have to call there. In fact, I think it's like a clear fold, just given that he shoves over the top so big. At the time, it's one of those moments where you just kind of act quickly and don't think about it. So I just kind of automatically went like top pair, nut flush draw, and then I picked up a gutter. But that doesn't absolutely mean I have to call, especially because he's just never shoving with worse there. And then my top pair is kind of irrelevant at that point. I don't think hitting 2 pairs is gonna be good. So yeah, I'm basically just hoping to hit my gutter or my flush, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So that should have been a fold. Pretty embarrassing to look back on, because I like realized soon afterwards. So like I said, it's one of those moments where you just kind of act quickly and then you realize it was completely wrong. Yeah, unfortunately made a big mistake there. Could have avoided it. Yeah, pretty unfortunate session. Started off so well and then just boom, 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 ended. But anyways, it's just about 1 a.m. now. I think I'm down maybe like 150 to 200 for the trip in total, but hopefully we can make it back. It's just one session. And yeah, it's 1 a.m. right now and Nacho Daddy is gonna close in an hour. So gonna make it there and get some dinner because that's the only place that I'm interested in going to that's open right now. And then gonna get some rest and hopefully I can do better tomorrow. Alright guys, that is it for tonight's poker vlog. Hope you guys enjoyed. It was definitely a roller coaster session. Tomorrow's another day. I might be playing at a new poker room, just like I've been doing, or I might play at the Wynn because that was my favorite place to play 1-3. Back when I used to make Vegas poker trips, it was the best place because it had a great buy-in structure and the game was pretty good. But I feel like it's debatable now. There are a lot of places to play low stakes. But I do mainly want to be playing like 2-5 this trip. So maybe Bellagio, maybe a new poker room, maybe 1-3 at the Wynn, who knows. But I'm gonna get some rest now because it's pretty late and I just got back. I want to get up rested tomorrow and not get up super late like I did today. But hope you guys enjoyed the vlogs. There were a ton of hands. Yeah, definitely a lot to get through, but it was a lot of fun. All right guys, have a good one and I will see you in the next vlog. Peace. Thank you.